A profound silence settled over the studio, immediately signaling that this was no ordinary broadcast. The usual pre-show murmurs, camera adjustments, and whispers through headsets were absent, replaced by a deliberate stillness, the kind that surfaces when two figures who grasp the nature of power face each other with nothing but raw reality between them. Howard Lutnick, 71, the United States Secretary of Commerce and the man responsible for rebuilding Kenner Fitzgerald after the devastation of 9/11, entered first. He straightened his cufflinks, scanned a single index card, and offered a nod of composed authority to the moderator, exuding the calm certainty of someone who had never lost a negotiation crucial to his objectives. Mark Carney arrived shortly after, carrying only a glass of water. He brought no notes, no tablets, no preparation visible, only the immense credibility of a career spent at the pinnacle of global economic influence. The White House had dictated the terms, the debate's existence, the format, the location, and the interlocutor. Their intention was clear. They had sent their sharpest economic strategist to outmaneuver a politician they presumed unprepared. What unfolded over the subsequent 41 minutes would be remembered as one of the most devastating public unravelings of a senior government official in modern diplomatic history. This was not about loud confrontation or personal attacks. It was arithmetic, precise, documented, and verifiable arithmetic that left the United States with no cover and no coherent response. In their opening statements, each man revealed the intellectual landscape he occupied. Lutnick spoke first, measured, assertive, and at ease under the lights. He presented American GDP, military expenditures, and consumer markets as pillars of strength, emphasizing that the United States remained Canada's most significant trading partner, largest source of foreign investment, and primary security guarantor. He crafted an image of a superpower Canada could not afford to alienate. For a brief 2 minutes, his rhetoric could convince even those unfamiliar with economics. Then Carney spoke, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. His voice remained calm, almost neutral, yet the effect was profound. He began delivering facts, numbers, each meticulously sourced, that dismantled every assertion Lutnick had made. Carney pointed out that while the United States is Canada's primary trading partner, Canada also absorbs more American exports than China and Japan combined. He detailed that the United States enjoys a services surplus with Canada exceeding $28 billion annually. Canadian energy exports, suspended at that moment, had been saving American consumers over $40 billion per year compared to alternative sources, and the suspension had already driven up household energy costs by $19 billion. He highlighted that Canadian critical minerals supply over 60% of the rare earth elements essential for American defense manufacturing, a vulnerability formerly noted by the Pentagon. Each figure struck like a hammer against a fragile window. Lutnick's outward composure remained intact, but a subtle involuntary shift in his gaze betrayed the first recognition of an asymmetry. He had prepared to face a politician, but a central banker was in front of him. The first real challenge arose when Carney questioned the chronology of escalation. Lutnick attempted to reframe the situation as Canadian provocation, claiming that the suspension of energy, diplomatic severance, and trade realignment were extreme responses to standard trade disputes. Carney countered by cataloging each preceding American action, including initial tariffs, demands for the Prime Minister's resignation, and steel ultimatums. He presented them sequentially, showing each Canadian measure as a calculated response to an American provocation, and then asked the pivotal question, which of these actions constitutes the first move? Lutnick hesitated, attempted a response, stopped, restarted, and then switched topics entirely, a move that signaled, unmistakably to viewers, analysts, and diplomats alike, that the United States had initiated every escalation. That moment arrived at the 6-minute mark, leaving 35 minutes remaining. The debate's middle portion evolved into an exercise in asymmetric engagement. Lutnick launched verbal assaults, while Carney countered with cold, factual data. With each exchange, the divide became more glaring and more agonizing. Lutnick attacked the Democratic Commerce Alliance as anti-American. Carney calmly cited the alliance's founding charter, which explicitly invited American participation, asking, if it is anti-American, why does the membership clause explicitly welcome the United States? Lutnick had not read the charter, and his silence confirmed it. When Lutnick claimed Canadian steel companies would return to the U.S. market. Once tariff pressure forced economic reality, Carney produced binding 10-year supply agreements displayed on a tablet, detailing capital investments for production lines and forward contracts, securing European and Asian markets through 2030. Carney explained that these contracts included penalties for early termination, making the return impossible. The steel cannot come back because it is committed, he stated. This is industrial physics, not negotiation. Lutnick's only reply was 4 words delivered with assured performance rather than conviction. Well, we will see about that. The contrast was clear to viewers worldwide. Attempting an emotional strategy, Lutnick shifted focus to American workers, families, and communities affected by Canada's actions. Factory closures, rising energy bills, and construction delays. For a fleeting moment, empathy seemed to sway the debate. Carney, however, deftly transformed this emotional appeal against Lutnick himself. Secretary Lutnick, he began, I want to treat your concern for American workers with seriousness because I share it. Now, let us examine the numbers. The costs being felt by American workers were not inflicted by Canada, but by the policies of your own president. The steel tariff, enacted by your administration alone, has pushed up home construction expenses by an average of $53,000 per house. The energy suspension, which responded to your demand that I step down, is driving $19 billion in added household costs this year. Your airspace closure, a reaction to diplomatic severance initiated by your administration, is bleeding American Airlines of $3.2 billion annually. Every burden affecting families, every financial hit described, stems from your own government's decisions, not Canada's, and I have the documentation to prove it. Would you like me to continue, or do you prefer to explain to American workers who is truly accountable for their hardship? Observers later noted this was the instant the debate concluded, not because of rhetoric, but because Lutnick's expression shifted. Confidence gave way to the dawning awareness of a battle he could not win, and there was no escape. Then arrived the moment destined for negotiation textbooks for years to come. Around the 31st minute, Lutnick attempted a last maneuver portraying his presence as a symbol of American goodwill. The fact that I am here, Mr. Prime Minister, proves that the United States is prepared to engage. We are at the table. We are ready to discuss. We seek a path forward. It was, arguably, his strongest rhetorical maneuver of the evening. Carney listened, a subtle nod acknowledging his cue, then issued a single, precise question. 7 words, delivered with the deliberate stillness of someone anticipating exactly this moment. What exactly are you offering Canada today? Silence ensued. Lutnick's mouth opened and closed, his eyes darting left, right, down, betraying the involuntary movements of a person grasping for an answer that did not exist. The pause stretched to 8 seconds, a lifetime on live television. The void was so complete that 90 million viewers could hear the studio ventilation hum because there was nothing else. Lutnick had no offer. The United States had no proposal, no compromise, no roadmap forward. The White House had sent their best economic strategist onto a global broadcast not to negotiate, but to argue, to score points, to perform the illusion of engagement without substance. Carney's 7-word question stripped that facade entirely, revealing the emptiness beneath, beyond the reach of talking points. Social media exploded in real time. Analytics showed the largest spike in engagement ever recorded for a live political broadcast. Over 400,000 posts appeared on one platform alone in the 60 seconds after the question. The most shared commentary came from a former United States trade representative, a Republican appointee, who posted a single line, "He does not have an answer because there is no answer. We never made one." Carney let the silence speak. He did not fill it. He did not ridicule. He did not press. He waited 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, demonstrating the patience of someone who knew the absence of words could convey more than speech. When the silence had said all it needed, Carney leaned slightly forward, eyes fixed on Lutnick, and uttered 5 words in the same quiet, devastating tone. "Send someone who can say yes." The remainder of the broadcast, nearly 9 minutes, continued in form, but the contest had already concluded. Lutnick's remaining arguments were perfunctory, met with Carney's almost gentle, minimal responses, the calm execution of someone who had already won and was merely marking time. The moderator concluded the session. The 5 words immediately began circulating, embedding themselves into the lexicon of the crisis. Within 20 minutes, "Send someone who can say yes" became the top trending phrase across all major social platforms worldwide. Within an hour, it dominated the digital headlines of every leading newspaper. International observers labeled it the sentence that ended America's final argument for engagement, exposing with surgical clarity the fundamental flaw that had defined the American approach from the outset. For 18 months, the United States had threatened, demanded, escalated, and performed, yet never once had it made an actual offer, proposed a solution, or placed a framework on the table. Carney's 5 words laid bare what Lutnick's 8 seconds of silence had already confirmed. There was no plan. There never had been a plan. There was only force, and force without a strategy is not policy. It is tantrum. President Trump watched the broadcast live from the residence with senior advisors. According to 4 sources, he did not stay until the end. He departed roughly at the 32nd minute, immediately following the "What exactly are you offering Canada today?" exchange before the 5-word line was spoken. 2 sources recounted that he swept a pile of briefing papers off a side table as he stood. A third said he turned to the chief of staff and said, at a volume audible to everyone present, That is the guy you told me would win. That is the sharpest mind in the cabinet. He had just been publicly dismantled by a leader governing a country the size of California. Get him off my TV. Get him out of my cabinet. Find someone who can beat Carney because nobody here can. The irony was unmistakable to the advisors. They had already deployed their strongest representative. There was no alternative. The bench was empty. The most severe strategic crisis in a generation was unfolding, and the administration had discovered live before 90 million viewers that it possessed no official capable of contending with the leader of its closest ally on the substance of the crisis it had provoked. A senior advisor later remarked that after the president left, silence filled the room. Then came the question no one wanted to voice. Who can we send next? They ran through names: Treasury, State, NSC, trade envoys, but each was dismissed for a reason. The trade representative lacked presence. The Treasury Secretary lacked depth on the Canada portfolio. The Secretary of State carried no economic credibility. Names circulated 3 times before someone dared say what everyone knew but could not confront. The only person capable of facing Carney with authority was the president himself. And everyone in the room understood the truth. It was impossible, not due to scheduling, but because of capability. What unfolded inside the White House in the 48 hours following the debate was later described by multiple officials as sheer institutional paralysis. The confrontation had done more than humiliate Lutnick. It had revealed a gaping void at the core of the administration's handling of the Canadian crisis. For 18 months, the strategy had been relentless escalation. Tariffs, ultimatums, executive orders, each calibrated to coerce Canada through overwhelming economic pressure. Not once had anyone in the administration crafted a substantive resolution package, a set of terms that could be presented as the foundation for negotiation. When Carney asked, "What exactly are you offering Canada today?" the question cut deeper than the individual. It challenged the entirety of the United States government. And as the silence lingered, the answer was unmistakable. There was nothing. No proposal, no offer, no roadmap. The realization struck simultaneously across the State Department, the Treasury, Commerce, and the National Security Council with nauseating clarity. 18 months of crisis escalation with its closest trading partner and strongest ally had produced no resolution plan. Escalation had become the objective itself, not a step toward one. And now, in front of the world, a 7-word question and 8 seconds of silence had broadcast the truth. The international response was immediate and swift, reflecting the stakes every nation perceived. Within 4 hours, the European Commission president released a statement lauding Carney's rigorous, data-driven method, subtly noting that the Democratic Commerce Alliance welcomes parties bringing concrete proposals, a pointed reference to the 7-word question defining the debate. Japan's trade minister described the debate as clarifying, announcing an accelerated timeline for full DCA integration. The United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary underscored the urgency of resilient economic systems, independent of any single partner's policy stability, a diplomatic way of saying the United States could no longer be relied upon. India, having requested observer status following the Steele ultimatum, applied for full membership within 48 hours. The DCA now counted 16 full members and 3 observers, collectively representing over 52% of global GDP. Each American misstep had expanded its ranks, and this debate was no exception. Domestically, the political fallout reached structural levels rather than episodic. A national poll conducted within 72 hours revealed that 61% of Americans had watched at least part of the broadcast or clips. Among them, 67% stated that Carney had decisively won. Even more striking was the partisan distribution. 38% of self-identified Republican voters acknowledged Carney's superior performance, the first time a significant portion of the president's base had openly rejected the administration's framing of the Canadian crisis. Editorial boards across major newspapers, including some that initially supported the administration's trade stance, published pieces labeling the debate a national embarrassment. The Wall Street Journal editorial board noted that it exposed a strategic vacuum at the heart of U.S. trade policy, costing American businesses, workers, and credibility hour by hour. 9 Republican senators now publicly opposed the administration's approach to Canada, while 2 more privately indicated plans to introduce legislation compelling a formal resolution proposal to Congress within 30 days. American business leaders reacted less with anger than with weary resignation, the understanding that the administration could not resolve a crisis it failed to grasp sufficiently to defend on live television. At a press conference, the Business Roundtable chair stated plainly, "We have been requesting a resolution plan from the White House for 6 months. After last night, we understand why we have received none. There is no plan. There never has been one. We can no longer wait." American businesses will begin engaging directly with the Democratic Commerce Alliance to protect supply chains, safeguard workers, and maintain long-term competitiveness. with or without a government that has shown it cannot engage meaningfully in the most critical economic crisis of our time. That moment, American businesses effectively abandoning reliance on their own administration and working independently with the DCA, marked a domestic fracture analysts described as irreparable within this presidential term. The S&P 500 fell nearly 3% in the 72 hours after the debate. The energy suspension, now in its fourth month, had already cost American consumers an estimated $31 billion in extra expenses. The steel tariff continued to drive construction costs up by an estimated $53,000 per home. Meanwhile, the Democratic Commerce Alliance, which had not existed 18 months prior, now encompassed over half of the global economy. American companies began joining independently, as their own government could not present an alternative vision. The once tightly integrated U.S.-Canada economic partnership, built over a century and a half, began unraveling, not with a single cataclysmic break, but through a slow, compounding cascade of self-inflicted wounds. Each misstep exacerbated the next, each closing doors that could never reopen. Donald Trump had sent his Commerce Secretary, the man labeled the sharpest economic mind in the cabinet, to confront Mark Carney on live international television. Carney dismantled him so thoroughly that the broadcast became a case study in asymmetric intellectual warfare. In 41 minutes, Lipnick failed to counter a single piece of Carney's data, could not answer a 7-word question that exposed the absence of any American resolution proposal, and sat through 8 seconds of silence that revealed to 90 million viewers the strategic void at the center of the world's most powerful government. Carney ended the debate with 5 words. Send someone who can say yes. The White House has yet to respond. The chair remains empty. The world has witnessed it. Somewhere in Ottawa, a man who was meant to be crushed by American pressure waits quietly for someone who can say yes. He is still waiting. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.